good morning, everybody. Welcome to our application support webinar for the 2021 TRIG programme. Hope you're all well today, doing good, looking forward to the half term next week. I'm Bex, I work for the Connected Places Catapult, and myself and my lovely team lead on the delivery of this VIP, very important programme for the DFT. So as always, I have my colleague James Tickler with me today, and James holds overall responsibility for the TRIG portfolio at the Department for Transport. James, hope you're well. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me today. Hi, there he is.
Morning.
Morning. Cool. So next slide, please, Nick. So why are we here? We're here to talk you through the TRIG 2021 programme and how you could potentially get your hands on a share of £1.95 million that the DFT has this year. They have it, they want to give it to you, but only if you can show that you're addressing a real transport challenge and something the market needs, and that you're doing something super cool and genuinely innovative, and also that you've had a good think about how you plan to commercialise your technology. So not necessarily making a load of money, but maybe enabling a new capability into your business or into your research area, that will propel you forwards in new ways or enhance your existing product lines. So just want to give some love to some of our participants today. As always, we have some new people that join us on every one of these webinars, so a very warm welcome if you haven't joined one of our TRIG webinars before, and thank you for joining as well to our friends who are with us. Arnold, hi. Chris from Passageway, how you doing? Oh gosh, there's loads of new people today. That's fantastic. Thank you. Helen Mars joined us. Joel, hi Joel, how you doing? Ruth, nice to see you, Ruth. Thank you so much for joining. We've got Robin Brownsell. Hi guys. Yeah, thank you so much. It looks like a nice busy one today, which is great. So in terms of the agenda, this is what it looks like today, and it's really super packed, so we'll try and whiz through everything as fast and as effectively as possible. So what are we doing? After James and I have done our usual thing of sort of taking you through TRIG, what it is, what we're looking for this year, I'll take you through some kind of hints and tips for your completing your application. And then we'll pass over to some of our experts at the DFT who work in the teams that are responsible for the TRIG challenge areas. So we have Paolo, we have James talking about maritime decarb, and then we have another COVID recovery challenge. Yes, COVID is still here. Sadly, it's not gone away yet. We still want people to be travelling together safely. So we're looking for technologies in this area. And Mike Forrest will tell us the sorts of things we're looking for. And then we've also got resilient transport systems. No, we don't think that transport systems are about to fall apart anytime soon. But we do want to ensure the robustness and strength of our transport system for future generations. So we're going to hand over to Jess to talk through what we're looking for in this challenge. Future of freight. So this is so exciting. So for the first time, we're branching out into freight. Essentially, how can we move stuff around more effectively and in a way that is kinder to the environment? So Liz is here to talk through our future of freight challenge and what's in scope. So rather excitingly as well, we're offering slightly enhanced grants of £100,000. A TRIG, as you'll probably know, traditionally offers £30,000 per grant, but we are actually piloting an enhanced grant of £100,000 this year for the first time. So we've got Michael Edwards. I'm sure most of you know Michael. He's been involved with TRIG for many years, and he's here to talk about what we would expect from our applicants to justify those higher grants. And then before James takes us through what we're looking for in TRIG's traditional open call, we'll no, after, sorry, I'm so sorry, after James takes us through the open call, we will do some questions and answers as we normally do. And then if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A, and we will endeavour to answer as many as we can. If we can't answer them, we will do so after the webinar and then get back to you. So I think that's it for me. I'll pass over now to James for a brief introduction to TRIG 2021.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Bex. Lovely to see everyone this morning. I'm hoping you can see me. Oh.
Yeah, we can see you. We can see you.
Oh, you can. Good.
Yeah.
Being a bit slow. Wonderful. Good to be here this morning. And next slide, please. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce TRIG for everyone just briefly. So if you know about TRIG, this will be slightly old hat, but if you're new to TRIG, this might be useful to you. So TRIG is a well-established program now within DFT and has been running since 2014. And this year, if we manage to give all the grants that we would like to, we'll be approaching 300 grants made in total over that period of 7 years, which is great. So as Beck said, TRIG tends to offer 30k grants to innovators to prove concepts. So we're looking for something new. We're looking for ideas at the beginning of their journeys where you need a bit of money, a bit of time to test whether it works or not fundamentally before you then go on to the more sort of involved development phases later. In terms of technology readiness levels, we tend to pitch TRIG at TRLs 2 to 4. So just after an initial idea has been conceived to the point where you've done a proof of concept. We see a lot of SMEs come to TRIG to look for our support, but also universities, and it's about a 60-30 split between SMEs and universities, but both are very welcome to come and try ideas. And the reason we run TRIG within DFT is that it helps not only stimulate new solutions to come to market, new beneficial solutions that are going to improve transport in some way, but it also acts as a way of getting the department to build its capability around innovation. So we introduce innovators to officials in the department and vice versa, and it helps officials understand how their work impacts on technology and how technology can impact on their work. So it's very good for us. And to try and make things run as smoothly as possible, the process is designed to be low burden. So the application form is relatively short, and it should be easier to access the money. So for us, it's a sort of a balance between taking perhaps a little bit more risk, but also that being proportionate because the grants we offer tend to be small. Bex did mention this year is especially exciting. In that we've got not only a really large central pot, this is the biggest TRIG we've ever mounted, but we're also piloting 100k grants in the future of freight space, which Liz is going to talk to you a little bit about later. And so the idea here is that it's not just technology readiness 2 to 4, you're going on towards TRL level 5. So actually, you haven't just proved the concept, but you're getting ready to demonstrate. You've got a prototype. You might be starting to look at some real world testing, but a bit more information on that later. Next slide, please, Nick. So as I said, this TRIG is really exciting because it's big, so it lets us fundamentally do more. And as you should all be aware, this is such a pivotal time for transport technology. We know that decarbonisation is this massive challenge that's lurking. We know that there's technology-driven change in transport itself that's changing how we move about at the moment. So electrification, digitalization, these big trends. But also, apart from all of that, we're also recovering from a pandemic. Of course, that pandemic made us think about transport, particularly public transport, in different ways. So great to see that we've got a great sort of spread of both themed priorities within this TRIG call, so namely maritime, COVID-19 recovery and resilience, but also future freight. And freight is another area where massive change will need to happen if we're going to decarbonise. And also, it's an area of transport that's come increasingly into focus as we've left the EU, and is still in the news right now, inescapably. So loads of really exciting challenge areas within this TRIG, loads of important work that we want to see, and loads of opportunity to improve transport. On the slide, you can see some fun techie pictures. These are all from past TRIG projects, and it just goes to show the breadth of TRIG and what it's able to fund. And I'll talk a bit more about that in the open call briefing a little bit later in the schedule. But just the last thing to say, this really is a ministerial favourite, and it's universally, it's a source of good news. We're helping guys like you do interesting technology stuff that's going to improve transport. So it is always popular in the top of the office here. That's what I'm going to say about TRIG 21 for the moment. I'm going to hand back to you, Bex.
Lovely, thank you. The minister said some nice things, didn't she, about TRIG in last week, wasn't it? Was it last week? It was the week before, blimey.
Week before, time flies.
Time flies, isn't it? Yeah, she was glowing about TRIG. I think she's quite passionate about SME acceleration. So yeah. Cool. Is it me? It's me. Hi to everyone who's joined in the last 5 minutes or so. We are, just to quickly recap, we're here to talk to you guys, to our potential TRIG applicants, about how to submit a really good TRIG application, and we're giving you some guidance and advice on what we're looking for in TRIG 2021. So I'll do my usual thing of taking you through the application process and some hints and tips and things. This year, we're abandoning our paper-based application process, so we're not going to be asking you to use Microsoft Word. We have a shiny new application platform, which is very exciting, so please do complete your application form online. If this is going to pose a problem for you, if you'd like any extra help, that's absolutely fine. Please get in touch with me and I will help you in any way that you need. The great thing about this is that you can start an application, save it, come back to it as many times as you like, edit it. It's really accessible, easy to use, which is great. You will find the link to the application page contained within the TRIG page on the CPC website. So Nick has put a link to the page that you need in the chat. Thank you very much for that, Nick. So please just go to that page. It will tell you more information about TRIG, what it is, how to apply, and crucially, it will have the supporting documentation on that website. And I strongly suggest, as I always say, please do read that documentation. Even if you've applied for TRIG 100 times, please read them, because we have slightly changed things this year, and there will be some new stuff that would just be good to kind of update yourselves on before you embark on your application. So first of all, read the application guidance. This really is your TRIG Bible, and it sets out everything you need to know about TRIG, from how to frame your answers and funding schedules and intellectual property and all that kind of stuff, and also has like a key dates and deadlines chart to tell you what's happening when. The grant agreement, rather dull, dry document, but it would be helpful to have a quick glance over it, because these are your terms and conditions, and you will need to read them anyway, because in the application form you need to tick to say that you agree with them. And then the grant specification is the document that sets out the scope for this whole competition in terms of what exactly the DfT is looking to fund and why they are looking to fund certain things. So I would suggest you read that one as well. You'll need to read it, because then you'll need to know how to frame your answers. Okay, so there's the documents. Let's talk a bit about the application form itself. If you have applied for TRIG before, this won't be a surprise to you. We haven't changed the form fundamentally. We're still asking the same sorts of questions. Section 1, again, as always, is your generic company or organization, university, contact information, and your due diligence section. We ask about policies and your standpoint with regards to certain things like health and safety and trafficking and all that kind of stuff. The crucial thing as well is we do ask about insurances, and some of you, even especially if you have a very small business, say with just a couple of employees, you're probably thinking, well, why do I need public liability insurance? If you don't hold employees insurance and public liability and those kinds of things, we wouldn't expect you to go out and buy policies for TRIG. But if you just indicate, if you just say no, you don't have those insurances, but kind of just put a little explanation as to why you don't have them, that would be great. So that's section 1. Section 2 is the main body of the application, as always, and there are 5 main questions. The first is around the challenge, and what we want you to do here is specifically talk about what problem or challenge in the market you are addressing, or what your technology addresses, and why there is a market need for your technology, and why now. If you do have evidence to back that up, fantastic, we want to see that. Innovation. So TRIG is not about funding stuff that's never been done before, ever. You could have something novel that has already been proven in another sector, but you're applying it to a new sector for the first time, or you have changed it ever so slightly, and this new approach is what makes it innovative. But we want to find out where the innovation lies, why that's state of the art. The third section, project management and team. We want to know what your Gantt chart is, what your plan is for delivering this 6-month project, what you're doing when, what your key milestones are, and the risks and opportunities associated, and also so who's in your team and why they are qualified to work with you on this project. Exploitation. So this is a big area. So the 3 areas that are the highest weighted in terms of scoring: challenge, innovation, and exploitation. So exploitation, we understand that TRIG funds early stage projects, early stage technological development. However, we want to know that you have thought about your exploitation plan. What is in the pipeline for you when you get to the end of TRIG? What are you going to do next? And we don't necessarily want you to come out of TRIG and say, yes, this was a roaring success, because TRIG also enables you to fail fast. But what we do want to know is that you have an aspiration to be able to take your research and your feasibility project and turn it into something really great. And that doesn't have to mean, like I mentioned before, that you're going to make tons of money off of it and that's it. It can mean that you want to embed a new capability within your company, or you want to inform teaching or policy. There are lots of impacts and really cool stuff that you can achieve with TRIG, and we would just want to know that our money is being used in a way that's going to generate some form of value add and impact. 5th thing, finances. Yes, of course. So essentially, giving you 30 grand or 100 grand, what you're going to do with the money exactly: staff, resources, consumables, equipment, testing. I've just gone out of my head, but there's kind of 5 key things that you can spend your money on. Essentially, you can subcontract to overseas companies. We get asked this all the time, as long as the majority of the work is undertaken in the UK and the technology will be deployed in the UK. The finances, your finance section has to demonstrate good value for money. If you're going to be hiring consultants and things, we would be looking for a day rate of around £200 to £300. When you're kind of creeping into the £600-700, it's kind of outside of the realms of possibility, unless there is a huge justification as to why you need this person and what value they're going to bring to the project. We need to know that. We don't tend to fund capital equipment either. So if you're going to be using your £10,000 of your £30,000 to buy, a whizzy piece of equipment, we don't tend to fund stuff like that. Again, unless there's some kind of justification around why you need that. Okay, that's the finances. Oh, there's word counts as well. So they are just to try and keep things succinct. They're around 800-ish words for every section, so you'll need to keep within the word counts. I can't stress this enough. This is really important, especially for me, who's a non-technical person trying to read some of these applications. Sometimes I cannot understand the technical language. I appreciate sometimes you do have to go into the technical aspect of it, of course you do, but if you could try where possible to pitch your idea at a consumer level, so something that somebody would just off the street would be able to pick up and understand what it is you're trying to do, that would be incredibly helpful to our assessors. Please try and avoid acronyms unless you're going to explain what they are, obscure jargon, things like that. Just keep it simple, focus on the outcome rather than exactly how it works. We don't really need to know the ins and outs of the technical detail. And then the deadline. So the deadline is Sunday, the 7th of November. So it's like Sunday night at midnight, not Saturday night at midnight. So you have the whole of Sunday, whole of that weekend essentially to submit your application. I think that's everything. If there's other questions you have, I haven't answered them, please put them in the Q&A. Cool. So I think I'm going to hand over to, is Paolo with us? Paolo, are you here? To talk about maritime. Yes.
Yes,
oh, fantastic. Cool. Okay. Go for it, Paolo. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, and apologies for the fact that I wouldn't be able to stay for the whole event. The works for the spending review are ramping up, and but I wanted to be here because this is a really, really important moment for maritime decarbonisation. As I mentioned to some of you last time we discussed, we are investing as a department a lot in supporting businesses in the UK to invest in clean maritime technologies, both at a mid-tier level with a clean maritime demonstration competition, which is, I believe, £23 million allocated across feasibility studies and technology trials around clean maritime technologies, but also around low TRL projects, initial project pilot stage, which we would like to progress towards a mid-TRL level of technology development, and which is why we are supporting the TRIG grant with this scheme. So essentially what I'm saying is that maritime decarbonisation is a very important policy issue for my department. This is really important in the context of us getting to net zero. As I mentioned last time, maritime equates today to the sole domestic shipping in terms of emission equates today to the emissions produced by rail and buses combined. So we really have got to do something about that. We are doing that via regulation. You've heard probably about the Transport Decarbonisation Plan. There are a series of initiatives in there aimed at curbing emissions. We are going to consult on steps to support and potentially mandate the deployment of shore power in UK ports, a potential phase-out date for non-zero emission vessels. We will also look at an indicative trajectory to net zero, explore the role of economic incentive, even consider how we can build on the clean maritime demonstration competition, which I mentioned, to explore something like a UK shipping office for reducing emissions, some more significant intervention in the maritime sector. But effectively, the point is we can explore regulation, but if we don't have the alternative, the non-polluting alternative for industry available for them to use in the market, then any regulation, it's difficult to be successful. So we need regulation, but at the same time, we need the technologies there. How do we get technologies available in the market? Well, one way is to support technology demonstrations, which we are doing, but it's also create a healthy pipeline of pilot stage ideas that are going to feed into that mid-TRL pot of technology demonstrations. So to end where I start, the TRIG scheme is incredibly important in create a healthy pipeline of projects. So I wouldn't be able to be around for the remainder of this event, but I've asked James to share my email. So if you have any policy question on projects, please feel free to send me an email. Thank you. Rebecca, I think it's back to you.
Sorry, yes, absolutely. It's me again. Sorry, thank you. Mike, have we got Mike to talk about the COVID challenge?
Yeah, good morning.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Bex. So great to be here this morning. Fantastic to see so many people on the call. Look, I think I'm going to avoid replicating some of the great points that Paolo's made. A lot of this is about creating those pipelines and driving thinking, driving, well, being guided by you guys, being guided by innovators, being guided by universities, but driving in the direction of some of the key challenges for transport, and certainly one of those fundamental challenges we've seen over the last 20 months has been the effect of the pandemic on the transport network. We've dealt with unprecedented challenges as a sector over the last 20 months, which have both tested our resilience and tested the resilience of the network. but also underline the fundamental role which transport plays and will continue to play in driving our economy and in connecting our communities. And as we start to see some sort of emergence of a steady state in terms of the COVID pandemic, we are starting to focus a little bit more towards, rather than just response. So my role has been very much COVID response, has been keeping the wheels moving effectively over the last 20 months in the COVID strategy and science space in the department. We're now looking slightly more towards the future, about embedding lessons learned and about considering how we as a department, as a sector, can embed some of those things and think about how we might do things differently next time around, how we might build in long-term resilience to pandemics into business as usual for the transport sector and for our transport network in the UK. Innovation is going to be absolutely crucial to that process. We simply can't build passenger confidence, embed future resilience without looking to new technology and without scaling new technologies to support that. We've seen throughout the course of the pandemic, the sector has stepped up at pace and provided us with a raft of innovation solutions to keep those wheels running, addressing those myriad challenges through things like the leveraging of data to sort of support things around passenger confidence, for example, so which vehicles, which services are likely to be busier than others, etc., etc. A lot in the kind of, I guess you might call it biosecurity theatre space around cleaning and around visibly cleaning to build confidence and things like that. Very, very keen to sort of build more insight on what's working, what isn't working in that space, and to kind of develop more of those technologies and some of those sort of embryonic solutions that have started to emerge. But really, keen to push this on into the next phase, and you'll see from the slide some of the possible things that we're really keen to sort of work with the sector on are things like ventilation filtration, so those practical, I guess, biosecurity type measures. How can we make sure that our vehicles and our spaces are as well ventilated, etc., as they possibly can be? And similarly on decontamination, we're also interested in things like remote biodetection, the potential down the line possibly for us to be able to identify possible hotspots for infection in certain spaces and proactively sort of address that. Public perception is a key one, as I've sort of alluded to. The passenger confidence and the like is going to be very, very important. So considering sort of social and behavioural approaches to encouraging both people to return to public transport and also encouraging active and outdoor travel alternatives as part of our department's wider and the government's wider decarbonisation agenda and sort of moving towards more sustainable transport in the future. We're also very interested in, as I've said, leveraging data around things like demand management, crowd control, optimizing and managing passenger flow, but also optimizing and managing network capacity and the capacity of services across modes as a whole. So playing into those, I guess, the more classic mobility as a service type of questions and the like, and what can we do to embed our resilience, if it's things like staffing and making sure that drivers are allocated in the most appropriate way to meet dynamic changes in demand and those sorts of things. All of this plays into this overall sense of resilience and flexibility in the transport system. There are also, we know from sort of previous TRIG engagement and engagement with the sector, a lot of work is being done around looking at monitoring compliance and safety on transport. So some really exciting work being done around things like the sort of recognizing through the use of AI, levels of face covering compliance, the levels of the people who are using face coverings in particular vehicles and stuff. So very interested in that space. Again, this feeds back to improving passenger confidence and of course also safety, and finally particularly keen to consider what sorts of physical mitigations we might be thinking about, or what can we do for private hire vehicles, taxis, and looking forward to other modes in the future that would use sort of similar personal transportation, and how we can embed considerations around safety, around resilience within that. Now you will have seen from that list that quite a lot of this stuff reads across beyond the pandemic and certainly beyond COVID, but also speaks to general resilience of the transport network. And I'm really delighted that as part of this call, we're also thinking about resilient transport systems as a whole for the future. And my colleague Jess, who I think I'm going to throw to now, is going to talk more about those general resilience themes and how TRIG is, how we're hoping that TRIG will be able to focus in on some of those in the longer term. So thanks.
Thanks so much, Mike. Jess, can I just jump in just ever so quickly before you go on to your bit, if that's all right. Just to remind people, if they're going to put a question, can you do it in the Q&A rather than in the chat? Because I think I've missed a couple. And thank you to everyone who's put questions already. Thank you. Sorry, Jess, carry on.
No worries. Hi, everyone. So I'm Jess Sorrell. I sit in the National Security Science and Research area, so we'll be covering the kind of wider resilience area. So we all know that a resilient transport system is essential for assuring the diverse and extensive needs of UK transport users. So we've all seen that disruption of transport, even for short periods of time, has significant economic and social implications. We're also seeing that resilience of the UK transport system is increasingly under threat due to the changes in our environment. So as Mike's gone through the COVID pandemic, but also in our dependency on technology and other systems. So we must build capabilities now to prepare for the future so that we're adapting to these trends to ensure sufficient levels of resilience, but also that we're reducing the risk of major disruption to the transport sector. So as everyone said so far, as we face these new challenges, innovative solutions are required to reduce these impacts to these risks so that we can respond and recover more quickly and effectively. Also, as Mike covered, we've seen how innovation has really helped during the COVID pandemic. And so we want to really explore what we can do in the wider resilience area. So, you know, these could include implementation of new technology systems, improved monitoring and surveillance, or building resilience by design. So within the resilience call, as well as the areas that Mike's gone through, we do have some wider areas, and a number of these examples really look to start building a transport system that's increasingly resilient to severe weather events and system failures. So these include flooding, extreme heat, and single points of failure. However, these are just examples of a very wide area. So we're really interested in all ideas that you have that have the potential to make the transport system more resilient. So I'll just run through some of these examples to give to kind of demonstrate why we need to increase this resilience. So the frequency and severity of severe weather events have already increased as a result of climate change. We're already seeing this now, and they're only projected to increase further. So the third Climate Change Risk Assessment report published this year and the associated infrastructure report identified significant risks for the transport sector and numerous areas within this that need more action. So one of these is flooding. And flooding has been identified as the greatest climate risk on the UK rail network. So we're already seeing high profile flooding events this year, such as the devastation seen in Germany and China. And Network Rail reported that between 2006 and 2016, flooding caused an annual average of approximately £15 million in Scheduled 8 compensation payments. So these were paid to both passengers and freight train operators for network disruption. So potential projects in this area might reduce exposure to flooding by improving flood defences or drainage, or they might improve recovery by assessing and repairing damage quickly and effectively. So we're already seeing higher recorded temperatures across the globe, and we see that high temperatures already cause significant delay on the UK transport system every year. So I'm sure we've all experienced delays on rail because of heat. So in July 2015, heat-related incidents on major routes such as London North Eastern that connects London to Scotland and at critical node points such as near Manchester Piccadilly, major disruptions were seen. So across the UK, failure and impairment of assets, as well as emergency speed restrictions, caused 220,000 delay minutes, with all regions experiencing at least double their daily average delay minutes. And this costed an estimated of £16 million to the national economy. So potential projects in this area might reduce that vulnerability to extreme heat by enabling services to run at these elevated temperatures or protecting passengers and staff health in hot conditions. So we also need to reduce impact and improve the recovery from single points of failures. So these include bridges, tunnels, embankments, or subsidence, but also reducing vulnerability to key sites and assessing, repairing and clearing locations affected. So I don't know if people remember in 2020 in August, a train derailed near Carmont in Aberdeenshire. And this was because it struck material washed out from a landslip following heavy rain. And sadly, 3 people were killed as a result of this derailment. So potential projects in this area might improve monitoring and surveillance of earthworks and drainage, or enable quicker response and recovery to these incidents. So we also are looking at system failures, so these wider kind of areas, and the transport system depends on and is depended upon by many other systems, including power, communication, and positioning, navigation, and timing, or PNT. So impacts of severe weather and other risks have the potential to propagate between and across these systems. And a cascading risk can cause extensive social and economic disruption beyond the initial impacts. So there were power outages in August 2019 in Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire, and this led to a number of stranded trains, which was triggered by onboard automatic safety systems. But because of this, that then caused a knock-on delays across the whole of the network. We're also seeing increased automation and autonomy, miniaturization of electronics and resilience on PNT technologies. So with these new challenges, it also means that we need to ensure that we are resilient in the event of these system failures. So Global Navigation Satellite Systems, or GNSS, is a critical enabler for the positioning, navigation, and timing provision. So if we had a loss of the GNSS, this could lead to significant impacts for the transport systems that use that position, navigating, and timing. And it's used across all the transport modes, so maritime, rail, roads. So we have space-based PNT, including this GNSS, and it's widely available and accessible at the moment. However, because we've become so reliant on it, there aren't as many alternative PNT technologies that we'd like. And so actually that reduction means that our resilience is kind of reduced as well. But equally, you know, PNT faces its own risks and kind of threats. So whether it's knocked out via jamming or human error, or to the impacts of severe space weather, which we know is likely. So potential projects in this area could explore new and emerging land-based PNT solutions, or building resilience to power and communication outages. So that was a really quick run through of some of those examples within that wider kind of resilience area. But like I said, you know, we're really interested and really want to see people's, you know, wide and varied ideas for making our transport systems more resilient. So I will hand back to Bex. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jess. That's really helpful. Okay, great. Can I bring up Liz, please, who's going to talk about future of freight? Thanks, Liz.
You can. Hopefully you can hear me and see me. Thank you.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So as James outlined at the start, for the first time, we are explicitly calling out freight and logistics within this TRIG call this year. The reasons being freight and logistics have never been so high on the media agenda, the public agenda, and recent events and resilience challenges, whether that's caused by COVID or new trading arrangements, have demonstrated just how critical freight and logistics are to all of our lives and all of the businesses across the UK. So we thought it very timely to actually call this out as a specific call under TRIG. Now, Future of Freight more broadly is a long-term strategic plan that the government are co-developing with the freight and logistics industry, and quite timely. We have just gone through a series of workshops to understand what the core challenges are for the freight sector that we need to address in that strategic plan. So that allows me to talk to some of these headline points in a bit more detail, because we've been kind of collecting those challenges. So the freight and logistics sector is vast and very diverse across the UK, but we are looking for ideas that cut across all modes or for any single mode. So when I say mode, I mean road, rail, aviation, or maritime. So ideas could be single mode or they could be cross modal. We are trying to approach things much more on a cross-modal basis within the Department for Transport, and make sure we particularly look at the linkages between them. Now, that's one area that's been highlighted to us, that actually the linkages between different modes of freight, so i.e. when something moves from road to rail, or from sea to road or sea to rail, or vice versa, that sometimes that's where the system breakdowns can happen or system inefficiencies can happen. And any ideas around how we can streamline those intermodal links, or make sure those are as efficient and well planned as possible when there's many different players operating across those intermodal links, that would be hugely beneficial to us. We have particularly put a focus on sustainability within this call, but as others have said with the other calls, these focus areas we've called out are not exhaustive. We would just be really looking from applicants that you have understood a specific freight logistics challenge with a freight and logistics partner, and that you're seeking to address that challenge. So these are suggested areas only, but I will talk through some more of them. So on the sustainability front, we have heard loud and clear that decarbonisation is a huge challenge for the sector, and more specifically in that, because there is a lot of effort and there's a lot of consultation going into sort of phase out of diesel HGVs and things, but what we have heard quite loud and clear from the industry is actually what do we do with all the existing assets. So looking at retrofit technologies and retrofit solutions might be an area to focus on, because when a freight and logistics company procures a lorry, a rail locomotive, or a vessel, or any of the sort of heavy cargo handling equipment associated with warehousing and ports, those assets are not short life cycle. You know, they can be in operation for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So when zero emission equivalents come along, what do we do with all those existing assets that still have plenty of useful life left in them? So that is a particular area of challenge that the industry have called out to us. Equally, air quality, not that the industry don't want to respond to air quality, but just the complexity of many different local regulations does create quite a complex picture for particularly road haulage, but not just exclusively road haulage, to manage. So when you're operating from one local area to another, or between many local urban environments where they have differing air quality regulations or restrictions, how can we help the businesses navigate those different local restrictions, or better, have that information available to them for their logistical planning? So that has particularly been highlighted to us as an area. Also, if I just talk, we've got there about changing skills requirements, and I think it would be remiss of me not to talk about this, because there has been so much in the media particularly about HGV driver shortage. But this is ensuring a sustainable skills supply across all of the freight and logistics sector. So not just for HGV drivers, but in warehousing, within ports, within shipping, within rail freight. It is an emerging challenge across all those, and in particularly how we can come up with some novel ideas around ensuring the welfare of our workers in the freight and logistics sector. Given that they travel so much to get goods to us, how can we address particularly around welfare and making sure we look after workers within this sector. And finally, I will talk about data and its potential role in improving or ensuring efficiency across a connected freight and logistics supply chain system. So we hear about data all the time, but particularly government are very interested in how it could help enable load sharing or improve load sharing, how it can help freight service planning, how it can help us use existing capacity better. So we know that we've got congestion across our road and rail network, but those congestion, that congestion is very much peak and trough. So how can we actually smooth flows and better utilize existing capacity? That's not necessarily just a data question, but that's a challenge that cuts across the sectors. How can we better utilize existing capacity that exists? And as I mentioned earlier, there's a potential role for data in terms of streamlining those intermodal links and allowing that freight service planning between different modes. Most freight and supply chain systems are quite complex. There's many players in that. So how can we help the operators understand, where goods are in the system? And finally, without repetition of the resilience section that's just been described, the industry as a whole, as well as government, is also very interested in ideas that can help predict and respond to disruption. So whatever that cause of that disruption might be, but we, as you are all aware, there have been quite a few recent events where supply chains have been disrupted for all sorts of reasons. But how can we better predict those and enable a timely response to them? I think that is it. But we're really excited that we're explicitly calling out freight in this call this time. And as the introduction said earlier, there is more money up for grabs on some cracking some more complex problems around freight and logistics this year. So we're really looking forward to some exciting and novel ideas on this. And back to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Liz. So yeah, as Liz alluded to, we do have 5 awards of £100,000 to give out this year, which is something we're piloting for the first time. James, I wonder if it's probably better to bring Michael up at this point, if that's all right, to talk about the 100K, and we'll come back to you if that's okay to do open call.
Yeah, no worries.
Awesome. Sorry to throw you in there, Michael. I tend to do that to you quite a lot. If you're around, Michael, there he is. Thank you. Yeah, I just thought it might be quite helpful for you to talk about the 100K grants.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
On from Liz, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So morning,
Thanks.
everyone. My name is Michael Edwards. I'm an innovation architect at Connected Places Catapult, where I look after our investment and commercialisation activities. So over the last year and a half or so, I've been working very closely with Bex and colleagues at the Department of Transport, Transport to sort of grow and extend the TRIG programme. So I've been supporting that from a strategic perspective and looking after things like how we write our grant specifications, our scoring frameworks, and supporting with the challenges that we go out to market with. So I'm just going to spend the next 5 or 10 minutes just giving you a bit an overview of some of the things we're looking for when we're looking at funding these slightly higher grants for up to £100,000 as part of the Future Freight Challenge. So I'll just start with, every application that is submitted to TRIG is assessed using the same framework. But obviously, when we're looking at grants that are £100,000 versus £30,000, we are looking for, there is an additional level of scrutiny that we go through in order to award these to successful applicants. So these are there's only £100,000 grants available for the Future Freight Challenge. It's not available in any of the other calls. And these are specifically looking for projects that are going to try and deliver some form of pilot. So these are pilot grants. And whereas normally in TRIG, we look at going from sort of TRL 2 at project start toward TRL 4, in the £100,000 grants, we're looking for applications or projects that are trying to push beyond TRL 4 toward TRL 5. And really that's taking, a project out of the lab environment and trying to validate the environment the project in a relevant environment. So we're looking for these higher grant awards to be delivering projects that are focused around delivering pilots. And we're expecting that the organisations or applicants that apply for these larger grants are going to be delivering against challenges and delivering projects that are more complex, that are probably more multidisciplinary, that have potentially consortium applied to them, that are looking to deliver something over and above what you'd expect for the projects around the £30,000 mark. And I think it's important that there is a clear justification in the application as to why you're seeking a £100,000 grant versus a £30,000 grant. As I said, there is additional scrutiny, but also we would advise applicants that if there's a project that you think fits a smaller grant award, to apply for the smaller grant award as opposed to trying to stretch it for the higher award, because we want people to get the funding that's appropriate for the type of project and the ambition that they have. So when we're looking at some of the areas that we'll be scoring, for example, around the challenge area, we want to see very, very strong evidence of the challenge that the project's looking to address. So we need clear links to department priorities, we need supporting data, we need insights that not only outline what the challenge is, but it gives good founding data behind why the challenge is one that should be addressed and should be addressed at the higher grant level. And again, from an innovation perspective, we very much want to see how that innovation is directly addressing that challenge and using the data that's been outlined in the challenge section to support and validate why the innovation is relevant and should be funded at the higher level. From a delivery perspective, when we're looking at the project management and the team, the higher grants, we've got to see a very, very clear project plan. We need very clear risk section, and specifically we need the risks around delivering the pilot and how the pilot could be impacted based on the ambitions of the project. And I think it's very, very important that we have a clear structured project plan and a Gantt chart, so that when we're looking at it from an assessment perspective, it's very clear to us what the applicant's looking to deliver, over what time frame, and specifically what roles and responsibilities have been allocated across the programme, so that we can have a high level of confidence that if the higher award is granted, that the project's deliverable and there's enough sort of project management rigor and good practice surrounding that project. When we're looking at the sort of exploitation side of the TRIGs, when we're looking at the high grant, we really need to see a clear understanding of the market, the commercial market, and how the outputs from the project will be exploited. So if we're delivering pilot projects, those pilot projects should have tangible outputs. Those outputs should both be used to validate the challenge and the innovation, but those project outputs specifically should have somewhere to go at the end of the project. So it's very important, both in the project plan and the exploitation plan, the applicants make it clear what will be done with those project outputs, what's the next stage of funding, how can they exploit the investment being made by the department such that the higher grant supports the commercialization and ongoing development of the products that are delivered through the project. I think when we look at it from an impact perspective, it's very important that the applicants make it clear as to what the £100,000 grant will enable them to achieve versus potentially a smaller grant award. And that's really trying to understand again, so the outputs from the project, what impact will they have both for the organisation and for the department, and specifically how can they be taken forward. And the last thing to cover is in terms of finances. So any applicant that's successful in receiving a £100,000 award will need to submit an independent accounts report as part of their the sort of overall project process when they're delivering against the grant. So Bex and the team can give more information on that. It's not required for the 30,000 grants, but it is required for the 100,000 grants, just because they're a bigger award, and that's the process that we're following. So I hope that was useful, and just giving a bit of extra context around some of the things we'll look at from an assessment perspective for the higher awards. And obviously, please contact myself, Bex, or anyone on the team for any further information you might need. Thanks, Bex.
Okay. Thank you so much. Hopefully that just gives you a flavour of whether or not you would feel like you're interested in applying, and if you are, that you aren't sure of whether or not your project is in scope or not, as Michael said, please feel free to reach out to us and we will be happy to discuss it with you. Cool, James. James is going to talk to you about the open call. Thanks a lot, James.
Brilliant, thanks Bex, and thanks Michael for explaining the 100k grants. So we're really, really excited about these 100k grants. They've been enabled by changes in the subsidy rules as much as anything else. And as it is a pilot, as it says in all the documentation, we're going to be evaluating the impact of offering larger grants really carefully. Because obviously, for each 100k grant we award, that's potentially 3 or so 30k grants that we're not awarding, because all the money essentially comes out of the same pot at the end of the day. So yeah, great to be doing that this year. So the open call. So a feature of every TRIG call is an open call, and I particularly enjoy the open call. I think the ability within the themed areas for the DFT to put money into its priorities is really important. But also the open call complements it by saying that actually, we don't have a monopoly on wisdom here, and there are lots of things out there that we potentially don't know about, and we would like to hear your ideas and hear you come forward and say, this is important, DFT, you should be funding this can improve transport. So yeah, that is the open call in a nutshell. So any technology, any mode that has where ideas have the potential to be beneficial one way or another. So we do have a couple of sort of things I'd like to mention within the open call we really would like to see. So ideas around low carbon fuels, how these are produced, how these are used, how these are stored, dispensed, etc. Anything around low carbon fuels would be exciting. We'd also like to see some ideas that make use of the open bus data that is all around us now. So the Bus Data Act from, I think, 2018 was the first Brexit piece of legislation that went through Parliament, and it made a number of changes to buses, one of them being that bus operators had to open up their data. So now, 2.5–3 years later, that data is now available. So apps and other services or products that make use of that data would be really exciting to see. We've heard recently, and it's been back in the news, obviously since Sarah Everard's murder, but the issues around the safety of lone travellers, but particularly women and girls on the public transport system. This is a ministerial priority. We'd love to see ideas that would help make people feel safer, make people safer, allow them to travel more confidently on the public transport system. That would be absolutely amazing. And last but not least, you heard Paolo talking about maritime decarbonisation. It's not just maritime. The decarbonisation challenge is very broad. It goes across all the modes. And we know that to meet Carbon Budget 6, which is the early 2030s, transport is going to have to really work hard to get there. And so, some of the answers are going to be around technologies that help individual modes decarbonize and help us travel and move goods around in the way we do today. But also tools and techniques, solutions that help us shift the modal balance of different types of transport, help people choose to travel more actively. All those things will very much be of interest to us. So this year we've provided a broad innovation needs section in the scope. So this is a slightly longer list of everything we think we're interested in. It's not exclusive. If you have an idea that's not on there, don't think we won't fund it. But we provided that to give you some stimulus and to help spark some ideas. So please do go and check out the scope document. That's all on there. I think that's all I want to say on the open call, Bex.
Yeah, I just popped up because there was a question in the chat just asking for the open call, which TRL level are we looking for, James?
So 2 to 4, just like the standard across the rest of TRIG. So we're looking for ideas where you want to prove the concept. You're not sure whether it's going to work. You need a bit of money to try out and either, as Bex said earlier, fail fast or show that early promise that you can then leverage with other funders, other stakeholders to take the next steps in your journey. And just one last thing before I let you grab the mic, Bex. We've got 600k for the open call this year, so 20 projects, which is really healthy. It's the biggest open call pot we've had in quite a while. So please get those thinking caps on and get those ideas coming in. Thanks.
Yeah, James, sorry, I'll just pass you back to you just very briefly. There's another question. Do we accept, do you think applications related to cybersecurity and connected vehicles would be appropriate for the open calls?
Yep, it's transport. If your idea is going to improve transport, yeah, absolutely.
Cool, thank you so much. James, can I keep you there if that's all right, because we're going to just launch into the Q&As. James and I have been answering questions as we've been going along, but if you have any other questions, please put them in the Q&A. We do have a couple. Is Paolo still with us? I don't know.
I think Paolo's had to leave.
Is he gone?
I can try and field questions.
No worries. Okay, well, yeah, see if you can. So somebody's asking, will waterways and small boats be considered in maritime decarb?
Yes, absolutely. So, anything in decarb world, it's not just the sort of tailpipe emissions that count. It's also capital carbon. So carbon involved in cement, steel, manufacturing, whatever. If we've got infrastructure such as the inland waterway network that we can reuse, that's really carbon efficient. So definitely inland waterways, decarbonisation is in, and definitely small boats. We've funded a few small boats related projects in the past.
Awesome, thank you. Daniel says, how does the award work? If you have a partner in the team, do we give the money to the lead applicant and then the applicant divvies out the money, or do we pay each individual contractor? The question is simply that we do award the full amount of money to the lead person in one foul swoop, and then it will be up to you to pay that money on to your subcontractors.
Well, there's not one foul swoop, it's two payments. One.
Sorry, I
one
mean, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
two payments, but as in we make one payment at a time for each project, and then yeah, it would be your responsibility to send that on. Yeah. Okay, Jonas says, so he thinks he might have a TRL1 idea, that in order to develop that further, they might need to attract a partner. This is a really interesting question, because the TRLs, although there are explanations as to what constitutes different TRLs, they can sometimes be a bit subjective in how you interpret what TRL level your technology is at. So what I would say, Jonas, is to get in touch with myself. I'll give you my email address and we'll discuss it a bit further, because it might be that you have already undertaken the basic research and are at a point where you think, yes, this could work on paper, so therefore you'd kind of be at TRL2. So I think we'd need a bit more information about where you're at in order to make a judgment. But I would say that, James, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that it would still be worth submitting an application.
I think so, yeah. I mean, the TRLs are there as a guide, and it's like, we know it's really different for digital projects versus physical projects, where you're actually sort of making things and then trying to potentially change, I don't know, cogs or whatever it is you're working with. So yeah, I'd say send in an application if you can really show that there's a concept that you're proving within the project.
Okay, cool. Why we bring TRLs into it is because what we want to see, we don't literally want somebody to apply for TRIG if they've had a dream the week before and thought something might work, and they've not actually done any research whatsoever to prove that this concept might be feasible. They haven't done any research on their market. They are not sure if they're addressing a transport challenge. You know, it's literally an idea. That's what TRIG is not. It's not suitable for. We would expect you to have put in some groundwork before you apply to TRIG. So that's why we say TRL2. And the reason we don't say more than TRL4 is because we appreciate, apart from the £100,000 grants, £30,000 is a relatively small amount of money, and we're not expecting you to move mountains. So we're not expecting you to be able to launch a viable product within the 6 months that we're giving you this £30,000 for. So we say, ideally, do your basic research, tell us what market you're intending to infiltrate and what the evidence is for that. Then we'll give you the money to progress to a point where you think, actually, yes, this could work. I've tested this in a small scale testing environment, and it could work. Generally, that's what we're looking for. Oh gosh, there's quite a few questions now.
There's a few, yeah. There's James, a question from there's a question from Alex on could you double check if question 44 is covered in the online application system? Bex, do you know what question 44 is off the top of your head? We might.
I wasn't going to answer that one because I haven't got the form in front of me. I can quickly find out.
Okay.
James, fill in for me and I'll quickly find out.
Okay. Okay, Jason, are we allowed to actively reach out to members of the team for support and advice? So I think CPC are happy to give some application support. Obviously, there's a line between sort of helping people apply and then helping people develop their ideas. We wouldn't want to give anyone an unfair advantage in the competition, because it has to be fair and open. But I would encourage you to reach out and ask, and we will let you know if we can help or not. Right.
Sorry to jump in. I think question 4 is the question Emma says. It should be the question around the challenge. Alex, send me an email and I'll see what the problem is. I'll just send you my email address. Crack on, James, thanks.
Okie doke. So anonymous attendee is looking to develop a sensor for traffic monitoring and pollution estimation. What call is suitable for this idea? Assuming you mean road traffic, it'll be the open call, as that will happily take applications from anywhere. You could maybe try and freight, but it sounds more like an open call question. If we do get applications that are really good and they don't fit, we do have the ability to swap applications between calls, but it's a reasonably rare thing for us to do.
You mean swapping it when the project's already started?
No, during the application process, if let's say we had loads and loads of really good maritime decarbonisation applications, we might take a very good one and bump it over into the open call, which it is still eligible for, and fund it through the open call.
Cool. The reason I've asked is because there's a question that's sort of similar to that in the chat. So it's saying, which is, it's a really, really good question. So if we read an application thinking, actually, we think this more adequately would sit under a different challenge, would we contact that applicant and say, look, we'd like to move your project across to a different challenge? Or would we just say, no, you've said it's this challenge, then it's got to stick in this challenge?
The whole ethos of TRIG is we want to fund the best ideas. So if we do identify a good idea and we think it would fit better somewhere else, we will move it over.
Yeah.
So don't worry. We've got an idea around flood resilience. If we submit the really good question. So the COVID and resilience call is relatively small, with five projects funded there. The open call is much bigger, with 20 projects. I would advise you to apply for the resilience call, because that's where it fits better. If it is a really good idea and the resilience call is oversubscribed, it might get bumped over, it might not. Equally, if you put that idea into the open call, there might be loads and loads of really good ideas from all over transport in the open call. So I don't think I give you specific advice, but it's a kind of like a game theory question, right? I'd suggest applying for the resilience call because that's where you fit best, but up to you.
There's a similar one, James, on that one. So Vicky's asking if she can focus on maritime decarb within a specific sector, such as vessels within the offshore wind sector.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's going to contribute to maritime decarbonisation, then that sounds good. I assume it's wind farm. It's a wind farm vessel that you're going to decarbonise, rather than your decarbonisation benefit coming from enabling the assembly of wind farms. Because that might fall out of scope, but probably best to have a more detailed chat with either Bex or I, and we'll get to the bottom of that.
Cool. Rebecca's asking, can previous grant winners apply? Yeah, definitely. We definitely want to support our previous triggers. So yeah, go for it.
Absolutely.
James, do you know if bus data, is the bus data set, does it contain speed as well as location?
Oh, now you're testing me. I'm afraid I don't know. I know that the kind of the theory was that you'd be able to sit at your bus stop and you'd be able to know where your bus was and watch it sort of moving around a map. So I'm guessing it must be regularly updated positional data, but I don't know exactly. You have to have a dig for that.
Cool. Alex, can the analysis of a primary data collection, i.e. surveys and interviews, be an acceptable outcome? That says to me it's more of an activity rather than an outcome. So if you're planning on analysing primary data collection within the project, I'd say that's an activity that you're going to complete. I'm not sure I entirely understand the question. Can this be an acceptable outcome? So like a completed analysis of a data set, if that's an outcome.
It sounds like it might be research as opposed to innovation work. I think if it was on the way to establishing some kind of commercial niche or validating a product or something like that, it might be eligible. But as you described it there, it doesn't sound like it is. I mean,
it's perfectly acceptable if it's in with your other outcomes. It's an interesting outcome, but if that's the sole outcome, as James said, it's kind of might be bordering on research. But just get in touch, Alex, and we'll be happy to discuss it in more detail. Okay, interesting. So someone's asking how many people are in this call, how many applications received last year. We'll give an indication of how competitive. So TRIG is this TRIG. So we've got sort of 5 TRIG programs, and this is the main TRIG program. So this program has always been the most popular of all of the TRIG programs. Last year, I think we got about 150 applications, and we awarded 23 projects. This year, we've got more projects to award and more funding to award, but we're more likely to get more applications. So in terms of normal grant funding, sort of Innovate UK funding, TRIG is the chances of securing a TRIG grant they're massively in the applicant's favour. But for the 100k grants, there's only 5 of them, so they're likely to be quite competitive. But I'd say they're much more accessible than some of the traditional sort of grant funding competitions that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of what 1 to 4, 1 to 5 kind of ratio in TRIG. It has been higher in some years, it has been lower in others, but you tend to see much higher ratios in the IUK grants, but it depends.
Andrew is applying within Future Freight and believes he has a cool product, but he doesn't have a UK partner. And he's just wondering if we can assist in acquiring a partner. That is something that the Catapult can help you with, sort of outside of TRIG, and also the KTN might be able to help. It depends what partner you're looking for. If you're looking for a commercial partner or a university partner, if you get in touch with us, Andrew, we can certainly help, or see how we can help. I'll put my email address in the chat.
So I've got a question from Chirag Gowala. Bringing offline passenger ground, so it's a bus question. They've already commercialized, but they wish to enhance technology by researching and implementing 5G-led IoT solutions. So again, if you're Chirag, if you're proving a new concept, sounds like it would be eligible. So TRIG isn't just for sort of first-time innovators, first product, etc. It's good for it's appropriate for new products, but we don't want to see just kind of incremental increases on existing solutions. There'd have to be something really new, something aggressive in there. But yeah, please do apply, and we'll have a look at it.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so Maddie, sorry, I probably butchered that. Can you briefly explain the application appraisal process? So who are the assessors? And it's a really good question, something we didn't actually cover. So thank you very much for that. The assessors, there's a kind of multi-stage assessment approach. So what we do first is we get all of our stack of applications, and we look at the due diligence section. So that's section 1 of the application, and we sort of conduct an initial pre-sift to make sure that all the applications are suitable to then pass across to undertake a full assessment. So the full assessment consists of 2 or 3 assessors, at least one assessor from the Catapult and one assessor from the department, scoring the questions in section 2 of the application against the scoring criteria, which is available on the website. And we give each question a score out of 10. And then what we do is after the full assessment has taken place, we sort of like add up all the scores and things, and then a selection of the applications will progress forward to interview stage. And the lovely thing about TRIG, and the stage that I really enjoy, is conducting the interview. So you have an opportunity to come and talk to us, and James and myself and other sort of experts will sit on the panel. You can talk to us about why your project should be funded and a bit more information about it, and we can sort of answer any questions you might have. And it's a great opportunity for you to be able to meet us sort of in person-ish over Zoom, so we can get a feel for your commitment and how passionate you are and your capability to undertake this project. And sometimes so James and I always says the interview process is so important, because sometimes you'll read an application and you'll think, yeah, I'm not really sure with this one, and then it's not until you meet the people you think, wow, they just blow you away with their capability and their commitment. You think, if I hadn't interviewed these people, I never would have wanted to fund this project based on what was written in the paper. And other times you can read it, because some companies and some organizations are so experienced with applying to calls like this. Their application is so amazing, and you read through it and you think, wow. And when you meet them, you think, oh, actually, I'm not really entirely sure that they're the right people for TRIG. And again, you never would have known that unless you actually sort of met them. So the interviews are the final stage, and then we'll move forward to awarding funding. Yeah, sorry, James, do you want to add something?
No, that was good. I was going to pick a next question, actually.
Oh, go for it.
Liz, I don't know if you're still here. We've got a question of the modal balance in future freight. Someone's asking, is it geared towards roads, or are you also interested in maritime?
I am still here, and so no, it's not geared towards roads. We're very much looking for ideas across any of the modes, so maritime, rail, aviation, road, and if it cuts across more than one road, even better, more than one mode, then even better. But yeah, we're not just looking at road freight. We're looking at any freight and logistics ideas.
Brilliant. Thanks, Liz. We have a commercialized signal control solution based on video data in South Korea. If we suggest this, is it possible to have access to, but there's a couple of questions about the bus open data set. I might need to take these offline and get back to you. I believe the data is accessible. I don't know who holds it. It may be the department, it may not be, but I will go and find out an answer for that. It'd be great, Nota and Hejin Lee, if you could drop me an email, and also there's someone further down it's you again, sorry, asking about bus open data, and I'll take that offline, if that's all right.
So Michael asks, what is the difference between an SME applying for support relative to university regarding funding? In terms of TRIG, there isn't anything apart from the outcomes that you will leverage. So with a university, we appreciate that you are kind of more looking at anything that's going to enhance your research, or allow you to form more commercial relationships and sort of lead on to possibly research commercialization, whereas commercial companies have the structure in place to be able to launch products. So we would expect more of a sort of an aspirational exploitation plan. Apart from that, really, there's not a huge amount of difference. I guess I'd need to know a bit more about what you mean by difference. In terms of completing the application and doing things like that, it's exactly the same. Cool, moving on then. Oh, James, you said you'll do the bus data ones, right?
Yeah, I'll take those offline.
Okay, Arnold. Oh yes, I'm so sorry, just very quickly. Yes, you can. Can you apply for this TRIG application if you are currently working on TRIG ZEF? Absolutely. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
as long as you've got the capacity to deliver both projects, if they overlap concurrently. We'll ask you about that if your idea progresses through the process. Jiafeng Zhu's asked, will the session be recorded? Yes, it is being recorded, and I believe it will be up on the website. Is that right, Bex?
Absolutely, it'll be up today, I should imagine.
Brilliant.
Anonymous, can a university apply while subcontracting some elements to a non-UK SME? Yes, absolutely. You can subcontract to international organisations as long as the majority of the work will be undertaken in the UK and the solution will be deployed in the UK.
I've got a question from Martin Robinson on a potentially high TRL freight idea. From what you've written, it sounds like it's ineligible because it's too mature, but it depends on the detail. I mean, are you still proving concepts, or are you looking to sort of demonstrate? Yeah, it's probably worth another conversation with either myself or colleagues at the Catapult.
Yeah, don't forget, guys, the fundamental thing about TRIG and what makes TRIG is that it has to, you know, the R in TRIG is research. So there has to be an element of you're still kind of figuring things out, and you're not quite sure, and it's a bit high risk, and you're kind of dipping your toe in the water. And even the higher TRL ones, there still needs to be an element of that development, product design, like something like that. So it can't be a kind of very established idea that you're just about to launch. There has to be an element of risk.
There's a great question from Kev at Fortuna about the inclusivity and variation, variety in our assessment board. So we're really trying to boost the how TRIG performs in terms of quality, diversity, and inclusion this year. We're asking applicants to provide EDI statements, and we are where we have bids of a similar strength, which in TRIG there tend to be quite a few. We're going to be sort of discriminating between those equally good bids by looking at what people are saying about quality and diversity. So we do have quite an inclusive set of people who will be reviewing the bids intentionally. I don't think we've got anyone with a declared disability on board, but we do have reach back into organisations who will help us assess accessibility ideas if we have any, because obviously we had a TRIG about a year ago, so the accessible TRIG call, and we've got all the contacts from that. So we'll be where we have bids that are around accessibility and improving transport's accessibility, we will reach back to them to help us with the bid assessment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it looks like we've just got one more question from Rebecca. Can we briefly reiterate what would differentiate a 30k project from a 100k project? In short, it's the what we would expect as an outcome. So the 30k is TRL 2 to 4. So we would expect the outcomes to be some form of small scale prototype or testing in a kind of laboratory environment. For the 100k projects, we would expect kind of moving towards a trial. So you've done your prototype and you're now going to apply it in a larger scale way or in an operational environment. And then there are some different sort of measures that we would like to see within the application form itself. So some additional justification that is you would just still go to the same place to do your application, but if you select that you're applying for a 100k grant, different boxes pop up and just ask for a bit more rigor in terms of the justification. Cool.
I think it's maybe our last question. Oh, we've got Alan's coming as well. Jiafeng, would wireless charging technology for drones be suitable for this call? Yes, absolutely. Sounds like a great call area to work. You know, we're all excited about drones and maximizing the impact of this technology will require things like wireless charging. So yeah, absolutely. Oh, Liz,
I think.
yeah, we've got. If we can yank you back into the room, Liz. Alan Walker's got a question for you. Are cross-border freight topics in scope and security thereof? Liz.
Yes, yeah, they definitely are. So the areas I outlined earlier were just areas that we've had particularly flagged. But if you can demonstrate what the problem is your idea is trying to resolve, then yes, it will be within scope.
Thanks, Liz. And we have had quite a few security sort of theme projects in the past, and there's no reason why if you've got a security idea, you can't send it in.
Yeah. Cool. I think that kind of draws everything to a close. Yeah, just left to say thank you so much for joining us today. If you do have any other additional questions that we haven't answered, please do feel free to reach out to the team. You can get in touch with us at the email address there or with myself directly. And don't forget the deadline is the 7th of November at midnight.
Yeah, just to add from me, thank you very much for your time today and listening to us. Please do send in loads of great bids. And if you know other people who might be interested in TRIG, this is, as I said, the biggest TRIG we've done. So we need as many good bids as possible. So please do spread the word. Of course, you might feel you're limiting your own chances.
Absolutely, yeah. Just some quick thank yous to Nick as always, and Antonia for sort of putting this event together. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been